Hello, Carlos. Good afternoon.
Hello,
Uh,
Antonio.
Today we are going to talk about social media networks in in online tutoring, which is something quite specific, and I'd like to listen your opinion in this context. Can you, what your experience, tell us what have you been done in with this type of tools and activities in your teaching environment?
Sure. Well, in my experience, that is it's with students about 10 to 15 years old. I can say that social media is very important for those students, but in a learning context, isn't very useful because not every student use those social networks, and I use them mainly uh, for a way to complement the communication that I do on a Moodle platform, for example, because to some students it's very important that I could use those social networks to make an announcement, but to the majority of our students it's not very useful because it's not it's not very organized. If I try to share some content on a social network like Facebook, uh, in the long run it's not useful. For an example, if a student needs to check some resource that I shared 3 months ago, it's really hard to search for information in a social network. So it's used mainly as a way to communicate with some students, and it's a nice way for the students to communicate with each other instead of communicating inside the platform, because not every student uses email.
It means that students get lost. Let's say if it's not a real moment, sometimes after they get lost about the contents, about your message, and so on. Is that so?
Yes, absolutely. Uh, there's a lots of things to do in a social network, and if
It's a
if
beautiful,
they
dreaming environment, but they got lost with so many confusion, so many
yes,
posts, and so on and so on. And that is another thing. From I would like to listen to your experience. There are several types of networks. Uh, if all your students are not in one type, so you need to send messages for several different environments, or did you catch them, or what happens?
yes, it's hard because uh, most of the students use Facebook, but not all of them. So if they don't have a profile, they can see some announcements. For example, if I use Twitter, uh, the message could reach could reach to every student, but it's easy to it's easy for them to miss my message in the middle of hundreds of messages that they receive on a social network like Twitter. So I really think that the best way to share content is using a platform, and to so that information and that resources stay organized, and the students could download them at any time, anywhere, any place.
Inside the platform. Let's say if we keep them inside the platform, it's easier for you and easier for them. Is that so?
Yes,
Okay.
no doubt
So,
about
so you are opening the door for another question that I consider very important. Uh, is that social media a complement? Can it be a main tool for communicating in online tutoring, or can be dispersing, confusing, and a loss of time, and um, not really be a good tool for concentrate our students in the learning process. From your experience, what you should tell me.
It's it's a complementary tool, absolutely. Not the main tool, but it can complement and it could help some students, like I said before, not all of them. It could help some students. So if I want to make a quick announcement, don't forget for tomorrow's test, well, that information could be posted on on a
But
social network.
this information can reach only a part of your students, not all, which is, let's
Yes,
say, an interrogation for, let's say, the
of course.
efficiency of the process.
Yes.
So we can make the same information using your platform. So what you would suggest your colleagues, teachers, to do, use the platform mainly or use the social networks.
They could use both at some degree. For example, on a platform, we can announce the date of that test, and we could remember students in the day before on a social network.
So you mean that you
You
should use or you could use the social networks as a reminder, a complementary information and as a reminder. Is that so?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
because and it's useful because uh, I could use the news forum on a platform, but the message goes to the student's email, and in my experience, I I see that most of students don't really use email. They use instant messaging a lot, but not email. So they could. It's possible that they miss a message that was sent for their email. So that's the use of the social networks because
So
some
it
of them
means that
are
one of the
almost always are
it
always
means
on that social network.
it means that one of the objectives for teachers is to persuade our students to use email because this is a very important to use all along life, and I think it's absolutely necessary. Okay,
Yes.
another question is, you thought when we start our meeting, you mentioned that you are reporting about students between 10 and 15. In your opinion, when we are talking about grown students or let's say post graduations and things like this, you think that the same comments you made are absolutely adjusted or you have to change something when we are talking about different ages of students?
Well, to for older students, it's easier to use only the platform because they're they're more they use email a lot more than young students because if a student wants to create a Gmail account, for example, uh, he could only create it at the age of 13. So it's normal that they don't use at a young age, but um, when they get older, they are using email a lot more, and it's easier for make an announcement on a forum, and the students receive an email with that message, and and like I said, with older students, is easier to put the social networks aside. We can always use them, but um, in a in a learning environment, it could present some challenges to for because the students don't don't become very focused on the content, and because, like I said before, there are a lot of things to do on a social network.
Okay, thank you very much. Your comments are very interesting and very important for focus our message about social networks. I would appreciate if you could summarize in a sort of conclusions in 1, 2, 3 points, and can you give us your conclusions about what we have been talking about, please?
Sure. So the bottom line is we must use uh, a e-learning platform like Moodle or other LMS to share the content, uh, and we could use the social networks as an alternative way to to communicate with the students instead
Complementary,
of forum
complementary way.
or
Is that so?
websites.
Is that so?
Uh,
Complementary way?
yes,
Alternative or
it's a
complementary?
compliment.
You understand complementary or alternative because they are slightly different.
Well, it's it's complement. It's not an alternative in any way because uh, it's really hard only to share the content on a social network because, like I said, not every student likes the same networks. Some students may miss that messages because they are not in that social network, and it's easier to organize all the information that we want to give to the students on a social network. It's
Okay.
really difficult.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting comments about this type of tools for online tutoring. We get together, Carlos, and we will be making some more comments about thinking about you. Thank you very much.